Hey, what's going on, my nerds and collectors alike? We are back again, taking another look at a figure, or let's say figures, from the Infinity Saga line here. This time around, we do have the Ironmonger and Obadiah Stane 2-pack, and this will probably be my last review from the Infinity Saga line, just as I don't really want the Nomad Captain America figure, and I also don't really want Surtur. And I believe that's it. There's also the Happy Hogan and Midas 2-pack. Not quite sold on that yet. Maybe if I find it on clearance, I might pick that up. But for now, this, in theory, is the last review from the Infinity Saga line. Figured I would save the biggest packaging for last. Also, this review is going to be a little bit wonky just from let's say, technical restraint. My setup here isn't quite big enough to have this whole package in frame. So we're going to do this a little weird. Just from where you're sitting, you can see, obviously, Ironmonger, all big and bulky in the package there. You do get his extra hands. There's that smoke effect piece that you can barely see right here next to the effect piece for his minigun going off, as well as the array of shell casings dropping down there. We do have, obviously, Obadiah Stane with Tony's arc reactor and a briefcase. And I believe there's also a rocket launcher in the back behind that shoulder piece right there, just from seeing other people's reviews. So we will go ahead and crack those open and see what all comes in there. But first, I do actually have to stand up to move this packaging around. Hopefully I can get that in frame for you guys there. Sure can. Alright, so, Obadiah Stane. After a long stint as second in command of Stark Industries, Stane is eager to exact revenge on Tony Stark. And then for the Ironmonger bio here, we have Obadiah Stane suits up as the powerful Ironmonger to threaten Iron Man. You know, super descriptive and detailed bios here. Thank you, Hasbro. You do have a nice large image of the first Iron Man poster. Down here, whew, hopefully don't take down the whole setup. You got your warnings, all that fun stuff. You can see there, I actually got mine from Amazon, so they cover that with a sticker. Don't worry about that. But you'd have your barcodes, legalese, unreadables, all the fun things. Let's go ahead and get these guys cracked open and see what they're about. Alright, so here we have Obadiah Stane and the Ironmonger out of the packaging and displayed with a couple of accessories here. Obviously, the Iron Man helmet that he's holding, not included. So we'll move that off to the side. And we're just going to go ahead and get Stane reviewed and out of the way first, because we all know that the Ironmonger is the main attraction here. So we are just going to move him out of the way. Get him set aside and take a quick look at Obadiah Stane. Real quickly, let's do some accessories, I suppose, just because we're going to do a little more of a raw video this time around. You do get his suitcase, which this does open, but sadly the arc reactor that he's also included with does not fit in here, but that's cool to have. You can see that it's textured to look like leather, and he can hold that in his left hand here. In his right hand, you have the arc reactor, which is nicely picked out in paint. Very clean. This thing looks really cool. So here we have proof that Tony Stark has a heart. Even got your nice little wire dangling off of there where it would plug in. Just really nice machined details all the way through here with some very clean paint. Definitely a cool accessory to have. Getting a closer look here at the Jeff Bridges head sculpt here. That looks fantastic. Spot on. Even get the little pinkish bags under his eyes, like he's been annoyed and kept up trying to deal with the 10 rings and killing Tony. On his hand here, you actually get a new right hand. If it'll focus here, let's hide the face. Come on. Come on. Struggling to focus. There we go. Nope. Right there. Alright. So you can see that he is sculpted with a ring on his pinky, and this hand is sculpted to actually perfectly fit the arc reactor. So what you do is you just slide that there. The main part will be held in place by the pinky, and then the other fingers grip the arc reactor without an issue. So that's very cool. He is on the young Nick Fury body, but being as I don't believe I've actually reviewed a suited body on that buck on this channel, we'll go ahead and knock out articulation right quick. Oh, before we do, his tie and his shirt do have nice pinstripes, but you can also see the gun rig in there from the Nick Fury body. So yes, his head is on a ball and hinge, so he can look up that far. Obadiah Stane can look down that far. He does have a swivel. You can look left and right. The beard does get in the way just a little bit, but you can kind of force it around there. It's just because of the low beard and then the collar of the jacket, so it's not a big problem. You do get ever so slightly a bit of tilt, just because these are on the old joints. The main attraction with the new joints are that you can get tilt and kind of different angles out of those, but hey, each joint has its own purpose. Moving to the arms here, you do get a 360 rotation. Being as this is the Nick Fury body, his arms go out 90. You do have a bicep swivel. You do have your pins here, but they are in the same color as the plastic at least, so you do have that. Mine's a little stuck here. Let's get it to move. There we go. You do get double jointed knees. Not knees, elbows. I don't know the parts of the body anymore. Your wrists swivel, and they are on a horizontal hinge. You do get ab crunch. That will crunch forward that far. Let's go ahead and get the jacket out of the way so you can see. There you go, that far. With the jacket on, even, you do still get some crunch back. There is a waist cut right at the belt. His legs kick forward almost 90. They do not kick back just due to sculpt. You do get your thigh rotation, double jointed knees. Look, I got it right that time. That go out that far. Your ankles hinge down that far. And being as this is the Nick Fury body, they did actually mold out a gap up there, so you can actually move your feet forward and get him to balance on this one, so your feet can go up that far. So with these little tiny sculpted shoes there, you can actually have him stand. And not only that, you also get an ankle rotation like it's on a boot cut. And then of course, you have your ankle pivot. So Obadiah Stane, definitely a cool character to have. The new accessories that we get with him are pretty cool. The head is also nice, as well as the new hand. Obvious choice to have him with the Ironmonger, just because it would be an easy pack-in, and as well as, you know, he's the one wearing the suit. But, real quick, obviously he's not the main attraction. Here he is next to the Nick Fury body. His head's a little bit bigger, so that's the only reason he's taller. And here is the original suited body with the J. Jonah Jameson. So there's Obadiah Stane with some suited characters here. Getting all of these guys out of the way. And moved off to the side. Here we have the big boy, Ironmonger. And let me tell you, this figure is chunky. I do not have the Hulkbuster figure, but I have been told that this figure is actually heavier than the Hulkbuster, even though it's a little bit skinnier than the Hulkbuster, and they are roughly the same height. So, do with that information what you will, but let's get into some details here. So the whole figure is sculpted in a nice dark gray gunmetal plastic, but if you look closely, It is sculpted with a rough metal texture to make it look like cast iron or steel. So that's very, very cool. You've got pistons all over the place on this figure, even on the back. Some of them even move, so the pistons back here will move. This little piece right here is on a hinge, and then this also rotates, so that swivels around. So if you move the arm, you can see that that moves, and with that, the piston in the arm also moves, but if you go past a certain point, it will pop out, so do be aware of that. Although this is a fairly soft plastic, so you don't have to really worry about breakage, but just for demonstration, if you go to 90 degrees or higher, you will pop that out. And that is on a little ball joint inside of there. So let's see if I can get this back in on camera, just so you can see the process here. You just move it forward, bend it a little bit, so that way you get it back into that slot, and then you simply just move it back down. You can see nice wiring detail up inside of the joint here. You get silver paint picked out on his arms for the large discs and the pistons and all of that fun jazz. The laser for his minigun is picked out in paint, as well as the tips of the bullets for his shell casings in the belt there, and also the vents for the barrel are also picked out with black paint, just so you can show that there's something in there. The inside of his hands here, you can see that each finger has an individually sculpted joint. He also has repulsor tech. On the inside of his hips, this is also picked out in silver. You can see all the wiring detail and all that fun stuff picked out in there. As you get closer to the hip, that is actually a gray plastic, I think, just so that way they can avoid paint rub. That's definitely looking really cool. The knees here also have pistons sculpted on those, and that's picked out in a nice silver. The ankles also have silver picked out on them, with pistons around that. On this side, you also have the same silver, and then the missiles here are picked out in two different colors of paint, so red for the rocket, and then yellow for the warhead. And obviously on the same side, you've got the piston action there. The shoulder pads here are also on pistons, and those can even rotate and articulate, so that's very, very cool. And last but not least here, we have a nice clear plastic over an arc reactor on the inside. And if you look, obviously they are the same size. Not the same sculpt, I don't think. Maybe the same sculpt? No, not the same sculpt, but it would be cool if you could actually crack that open and say there's like an arc reactor in there or something, or even have this slide down or something kind of cool and be able to slot this arc reactor in there. But as that is, that looks fantastic. You can see all the nice details in there, and it's all painted white, so it looks like it's glowing and powered on. You also get the white in the eyes up here, obviously, but just taking a moment to appreciate the detail back there. And this is behind a piece of clear plastic, so it's giving the effect that it's behind glass. So, very, very cool to finally have a screen accurate and size accurate Ironmonger. Doing articulation here, since we've done our details. Your head is on a dumbbell joint, and he can look up that far. He can look down that far. Your Ironmonger does have some tilt, as well as rotation inside of there. Now, clearly this is going to be just a little bit hindered, just due to the fact that, He's got that big collar piece around him. But that's movie accurate, and he still gets some good movement in there, so who are we to complain? Arms here. We'll get to that in a moment. Arms can rotate 360, but obviously that piston will knock that out. And with the arm movement, you also have, we'll go ahead and slide this out just to demonstrate. You have these on a piston, and at the top there, for focus, there we go. At the top here, that also rotates. So that way it sits on there all nice and flush. And sliding those back in, they just sit in their designated spot, so that way it sits the way it's supposed to. His arms go up past 90. You do have a bicep rotation. You do get a single jointed elbow just due to the size, and that does not quite reach 90. Your wrists, both sets, because this figure does come with an additional set of hands, will rotate, and they have a horizontal hinge, which the back of the sculpt there does hinder back movement a little bit, but clearly he can hinge his hand in. The middle of the the middle of the figure here is on a diaphragm joint, just so you can get your increased movement, but don't let that fool you. He does have a good bit of crunch. You can also crunch back. This will also give you your tilt, as well as your waist swivel. And if you can see it in there, it's just a very large open ring on a big old dumbbell joint plugged straight up into the torso. So you do get quite a bit of movement there with very little hindrance, just due to the nature of the armor. Getting him back in frame here because this guy is fairly large. Let's go ahead and get his arms up just to demonstrate. You can kick forward that far. You can also kick back that far. If you extend it out, you might actually be able to... There you go. You can get your Ironmonger doing some high kicks. And then that's a soft-ish plastic. So if you get it around the right way here, he can kick out a little bit, as well as kick in some, but do be aware that that's kind of a springy ball on there, so you really only get your outward movement, but that's fine. You get a thigh rotation, which also lets you see some more detail in there. You have a single jointed knee, but that bends all the way to 90 degrees. And last but not least, your ankle can hinge back that far. Does not hinge forward at all, but you do get ankle pivot. So that's very nice to see. And I did forget to mention that the bottom of his feet here do have peg holes, so, you know, for his little tiny plastic accessories, I suppose, or if you have stands. It would be cool if we did get pieces reminiscent of that classic War Machine where he had like the big billowing smoke thrusters that would come out. That'd be pretty cool to see. But I am not one to complain about such an impressive figure for the price point that we have them at. Getting into his accessories here, I did mention that Ironmonger comes with a set of fists, and those are very easy to swap out. You just take the hand, pull it off there. That looked like there was a little more force, but honestly I just had him a little unstable, but you put that right on. But speaking of being on this arm here, just to get it out of the way, so clearly Ironmonger has the minigun, and with that minigun you get a smoke effect piece that plugs right in the middle of all those barrels. He includes the orange blast effect piece that we've seen many a time. If you move the wrist down there, that plugs in as such. And then he also includes a trail of shell casings, which are very nicely done, picked out in a goldish brass. As you can see, they've all been expended. One detail, though, is the brass has not been expanded at the tip. It's just regular shell casings. So it would have been cool if they were all blown out after being used. But, hey, we do get a nice look here. And, hold on. They do fall fairly uniform at the beginning, but obviously, as it continues to go, they disperse and start rattling around, which is a very nice simulated look. And that just plugs in. There's a little slot right at the belt there. That just plugs in. So you can have Ironmonger blasting away at Tony Stark. Let's get them all nice and posed up right there. That's a pretty cool look. Getting all of that off. One final accessory here. We do have his missile pod, which does have a nice silver with black tip rocket in there. And then you've got black paint around the top. And then just gray. And this clips on to either side of the larger portion of the piston. And that is also on a swivel. So that way when you hook it on, you can face it forward and have it targeted where it needs to be. And you can move that up just a little bit, so that way you got a little bit more clearance there. Let's see, right there. Gotta find that sweet spot right here. It's a little bit loose, but still a cool effect nonetheless. I think it actually fits better on the left side here. That appears to be a little bit bigger, perhaps. Yeah, that fits a little bit better there, so I could have just been putting that on the wrong side there, guys. That's my fault. Yeah, there we go. That's looking good. So that's pretty cool. One last thing you can do, just in case, you know, you wanted to, you can remove the Obadiah Stane head sculpt here. You can remove the Ironmonger head, which if you look inside here, what's pretty cool is that is just a plain white head shape up inside there with the Ironmonger helmet overlay on it to give that effect of the glowing eyes. So that's pretty cool. But, funny enough, you can pop the Obadiah Stane head on there. So if you wanted to simulate the look of Obadiah being inside the armor, you can do that. It's kind of loose on there just because the peg isn't the exact size, but you can make it work. What would have been really cool is if the chest here opened up and simulated Obadiah Stane being in there, kind of like that original figure back in 2008 did. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. We're getting a very awesome figure way down the line past the date that anybody expected Hasbro to come back and do one of these. Just kind of getting everything sorted here. Let's pop this head back on. Get him standing back there a little bit. There we go. Looking all intimidating. Let's get him compared to a couple of bigger figures here to start us off. Just because here is the comic 2-pack of Juggernaut and Colossus. That is the Juggernaut. So he is even a good head taller than our Juggernaut here. Let's get him next to a couple of heroes with Giant Man and Korg. There's a pretty good height difference between the two. Giant Man is about a head taller than he is, but obviously way skinnier. And then Korg is obviously a good head and a half shorter. Let's get these two out of here. Now, seeing as this armor is very reminiscent of the Hulkbuster armor, let's do some Hulkish characters with Cole Obsidian and the Incredible Hulk. Now, even though Cole Obsidian is roughly the same size, Ironmonger is a good 2 pounds heavier than he is, which is very interesting. Let's get him next to another silver villain here. He is next to Ultron, even standing a good head taller than Ultron there. And last but not least, here he is next to the Iron Man and Thanos 2-pack Thanos. So even our greatest villain is dwarfed in comparison to the Ironmonger armor. Oh, and of course there is one more comparison I do want to do here before I forget, because what is Ironmonger without Iron Man? Let's get the heads swapped back there, because I did use his head in the beginning, and I did not put it back on because I have poor preparation skills for these. But here's Ironmonger next to the Iron Man Mark III. I'll go ahead and get Obadiah Stane in there for the final send-off. That's just impressive. Who would have thought that 12 years later we'd come back and get an Ironmonger, an Iron Man Mark III, and an Obadiah Stane redone, properly scaled, with all this extra detail. It's crazy, man. MCU's been going on for a long time. I've personally been there since the first Iron Man movie, and it's just really, really crazy to see how far we've come, and I'm really glad they went back and are starting to do some of these older characters. I'm hoping that we might get a couple more Iron Man armors, maybe an Iron Man Mark VI, maybe a new War Machine from Iron Man 2. I'd like a Whiplash. So, you know, going back, getting some of those armors there will be pretty cool. Let me go ahead and get Tony out of the way. Final thoughts. Definitely worth it. I picked this guy up off of Amazon for around $70. In my opinion, totally worth the purchase for just the Ironmonger alone. For me, Stane is a throw-in accessory figure, honestly. But hey, that's just my personal preference. Even if you're just getting this guy, definitely worth a pickup. He's hella impressive. Detail's great. Sculpt is fantastic. It's just awesome to see that they came back and did this guy. Honestly, I could sit here and gush about it for probably about another half hour. But I've got to go. You've got to go. So before I sign off here, I would just want to make it clear that this channel and all of its content are not for anybody under the ages of 13 years old. Stay safe, everybody. Happy collecting.